We have an unidentified flying object.
Researcher on a mission with Dr. J. Andy Elias.
We have an unidentified flying object.
Welcome back to another episode of Dr. J Radio Live. Of course, I am your host, Dr. J. Co-hosting with me live in London is Johnny Webb, where it happens to be 3 in the morning. Today, as always, we have a superstar show for you today, but today is an extra special show because we have another superstar. You guys have heard several celebrities. You've heard on government officials. You heard, of course, the former defense minister. Paul Heller has been on, 5 times in the last year and a half. You heard 2 astronauts. By the way, Story Musgrave is up live on Dr. J Radio Live, the YouTube channel. You've heard just about everybody. And each time, whether it be a congressman, a senator, former presidential candidate, an astronaut, there seems to be more attention put to this subject. And that is exactly why I invited today's guest to be on the show. And that happens to be the one and only superstar, Jack Osbourne. Mr. Osbourne, welcome
Hello.
to the show.
Thanks for having me. I don't know about superstar. That might be embellishing.
Well, to me, you are. Let me
Wow.
tell you why. Because you are bringing awareness. You are sticking your neck out there. There's only a handful that I know. Sean Stone, Oliver Stone's son, is out there talking about this. Tom DeLonge from Blink-182. They're the lead singer of Hollywood Undead, Jordan Terrell. These guys are the only ones that I know that are actively talking about this, aside from the government officials I mentioned. So
Don't
I got
forget Dan Aykroyd.
Dan Aykroyd, that's right. And thank you for reminding me. And David Sarita, the guy who interviewed him for Dan Aykroyd Unplugged, UFOs Unplugged, he was on not too long ago talking about that. So thank you for reminding me. We usually do a UFO news segment. I don't want to waste the time with you, but I want to say 2 things. First of all, by the way, what happened what's going on recently is I've been saying the news reports are so full, I cannot keep up with them to give you, the listeners, what's happening. But let me just tell you 2 pieces of news. First of all, the June report, it says UFO sightings for the month of June doubled worldwide. What is going on? And the second piece, all the last 2 years, everybody's been hearing these sounds coming out of the sky, trumpets, weird shrilling noises, shrieking noises. Well, just today, there happened to be another one caught in Indonesia. Thousands of people heard it. Is this just like the revelations of, something happening, that the trumpets, or is it an interpretation of something happening with the extraterrestrials, just as in the Bible references Eric von Däniken talks about? So many people used their local terms to describe what was something else. And that being said, Jack, why do you think we're having so much activity? I mean, these are just the craziest times that I've ever seen in literally 31 years that I've been paying attention to this topic. What do you just think personally?
I think it's a couple things. I think maybe, the question is, are more things happening, or do people have more devices now to start recording stuff and take pictures? Everyone's walking around with a camera in their pocket because of phones. So are people just able to take pictures and, record sound and video now a lot more easily? So it's kind of I often wonder that.
I agree with you that though. Let me tell you though. I said the same thing, and that explains why there's more footage, and also more military planes are probably being tested. I'm sure if we've been sitting on extraterrestrial crash disks for 70 to 100 years, we probably figured out a way to make something. So that's one angle. Right?
I have no doubt, and I also think probably a large portion of UFOs are military tech.
Yes.
I would probably go as far as to say at least a third of them, in my opinion. Especially in America.
Yes, I would think it's even a little bit higher. But the report it wasn't that more videos were caught. It was that just more sightings in general worldwide. Yeah. Double than normal. And for weeks we've been reporting on individual cases, and it just boggles my mind. Are we really on the cusp of something or not? But let me backtrack to this. In case everybody out there, this is a little secret that we're going to share with you. I met Jack a little over a year ago when my dear friend Roger Lear performed his last implant removal surgery. I had no idea he was interested in UFOs. And Jack, what led you to be interested? Before you answer that question, let's get to the surgery. What led you to actually get to that surgery and be present? Because you were super interested in what was happening.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I know that, because of, the documentaries coming out now, and it was kind of a big week on, with Coast to Coast with Corbell talking about his movie and Patient 17 coming on. I was there and I witnessed the surgery. And kind of what led me to that has been, UFOs, extraterrestrials, astronomy have always been passions of mine since I was a kid. I was in the late 90s when everyone was going kind of Roswell mad, and the movies were coming out, and and then there was the Phoenix Lights and all that. Like that to me, those are probably some of my most kind of fond memories of a child, just being so just enamored with.
We have an unidentified flying object.
Researcher on a mission with Dr. J.N. Elias.
We have an unidentified flying object.
Welcome back to another episode of Dr. J Radio Live. Of course, I am your host, Dr. J. Co-hosting with me live in London is Johnny Webb, where it happens to be 3 a.m. Today, as always, we have a superstar show for you today, but today is an extra special show because we have another superstar. You guys have heard several celebrities. You've heard
We have an unidentified flying object.
Researcher on a mission with Dr. J.N. Elias.
We have an unidentified flying object.
Welcome back to another episode of Dr. J Radio Live. Of course, I am your host, Dr. J. Co-hosting with me live in London is Johnny Webb, where it happens to be 3 a.m. Today, as always, we have a superstar show for you today, but today is an extra special show because we have another superstar. You guys have heard several celebrities. You've heard on government officials. You heard, of course, the former defense minister. Paul Heller has been on, 5 times in the last year and a half. You heard 2 astronauts. By the way, Story Musgrave is up live on Dr. J Radio Live, the YouTube channel. You've heard just about everybody. And each time, whether it be a congressman, a senator, former presidential candidate, an astronaut, there seems to be more attention put to this subject. And that is exactly why I invited today's guest to be on the show. And that happens to be the one and only superstar Jack Osbourne. Mr. Osbourne, welcome
Hello.
to the show.
Thanks for having me. I don't know about superstar. That might be embellishing.
Well, to me, you are. Let me tell you why. Because you are bringing awareness. You are sticking your neck out there. There's only a handful that I know. Sean Stone, Oliver Stone's son, is out there talking about this. Tom DeLonge from Blink-182. They're the lead singer of Hollywood Undead, Jordan Terrell. These guys are the only ones that I know that are actively talking about this, aside from the government officials I mentioned. So
Don't forget Dan Aykroyd.
Dan Aykroyd, that's right. And thank you for reminding me. And David Sarita, the guy who interviewed him for Dan Aykroyd Unplugged, UFOs Unplugged, he was on not too long ago talking about that. So thank you for reminding me. Again, we usually do a UFO news segment. I don't want to waste the time with you, but I want to say 2 things. First of all, by the way, what happened what's going on recently is I've been saying the news reports are so full, I cannot keep up with them to give you, the listeners, what's happening. But let me just tell you 2 pieces of news. First of all, the June report, it says UFO sightings for the month of June doubled worldwide. What is going on? And the second piece, all the last 2 years, everybody's been hearing these sounds coming out of the sky, trumpets, weird shrilling noises, shrieking noises. Well, just today, there happened to be another one caught in Indonesia. Thousands of people heard it. Is this just like the revelations of, something happening, that the trumpets, or is it an interpretation of something happening with the extraterrestrials, just as in the Bible references Eric von Daniken talks about? So many people used their local terms to describe what was something else. That being said, Jack, why do you think we're having so much activity? I mean, these are just the craziest times that I've ever seen in literally 31 years that I've been paying attention to this topic. What do you just think personally?
I think it's a couple things. I think maybe, the question is, are more things happening, or do people have more devices now to start recording stuff and take pictures? Everyone's walking around with a camera in their pocket because of phones. So are people just able to take pictures and, record sound and video now a lot more easily? So it's kind of I often wonder that.
I agree with you that though. Let me tell you though. I said the same thing, and that explains why there's more footage, and also more military planes are probably being tested. I'm sure if we've been sitting on extraterrestrial crash disks for 70 to 100 years, we probably figured out a way to make something. So that's one angle. Right?
I have no doubt, and I also think probably a large portion of UFOs are military tech.
Yes.
I would probably go as far as to say at least a third of them, in my opinion. Especially in America.
Yes. I would think it's even a little bit higher, but the report it wasn't that more videos were caught. It was that just more sightings in general worldwide. Yeah. Double than normal. And for weeks we've been reporting on individual cases, and it just boggles my mind. Are we really on the cusp of something or not? But let me backtrack to this. In case everybody out there, this is a little secret that we're going to share with you. I met Jack a little over a year ago when my dear friend Roger Lear performed his last implant removal surgery. I had no idea he was interested in UFOs. And Jack, what led you to be interested? Before you answer that question, let's get to the surgery. What led you to actually get to that surgery and be present? Because you were super interested in what was happening.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I know that, because of, the documentaries coming out now, and it was kind of a big week on, with Coast to Coast, with Corbell talking about his movie and Patient 17 coming on. I was there and I witnessed the surgery. And kind of what led me to that has been, UFOs, extraterrestrials, astronomy have always been passions of mine since I was a kid. I was in the late 90s when everyone was going kind of Roswell mad, and the movies were coming out, and and then there was the Phoenix Lights and all that. Like that to me, those are probably some of my most kind of fond memories of a child, just being so just enamored with extraterrestrials and the thought of there could be aliens in another world and they could be visiting us, and it really all started when I was, probably around 10 or 11.
The Phoenix Lights, I got to say, that was a super spectacular sight because you have a mile-wide craft. And clearly, it's not just individual lights. You could tell it's one big object, especially in certain angles caught, not to mention the 10,000-plus people that talked about it. But just as importantly, it was repeated again this past February. The difference is no mainstream media covered it. Mm. I just thought that was astonishing. You have the same incident, a mile-wide craft hovering slowly without sound across the Arizona Valley and Phoenix, and yet nobody covers it.
Yeah, no, I mean, now we can start putting on the tinfoil hat, but look who's controlling the media.
That's right.
Big corporations. Big corporations are controlling the government. It's a whole, they run the R&D company. I mean, listen. The sheer fact that Disney is owned by General Electric that makes bombs, airplanes, and miniguns. It's right. It's all that pyramid.
It's a scary, scary thought, actually. I didn't know Halliburton was part of the prison systems. I knew they were funding all of the military from shoelaces to bullets, but they really got a stranglehold on us. Now, a while ago, I was telling you about this amazing researcher who's been doing this for 4 decades now. His name is Grant Cameron. He used to be the specialist of presidents and UFOs, and he went back and literally he was the only person to ask the most brilliant question of anybody up there. He had a chance to call in a radio show and speak to Dick Cheney. He never asked him, is UFOs real or anything like that. If you ever run into a politician, you want to ask the one and only true question: have you been briefed by UFOs? Do you know what his answer was, Dick Cheney's was?
What?
He said, if I had been briefed, it would probably be classified and I wouldn't be talking about it. Now, is that plausible deniability or what?
Oh, I mean, that's in a nutshell. That's a perfect example of plausible deniability.
Yeah, I mean, he could have just said no. He said,
Yeah.
no, I've never been briefed. But no, he went on to say, if I had been briefed. So I just thought it was fantastic. But now recently he's made a switch to consciousness and alien abduction. And he realizes that that is the key. We don't need to study, UFO sightings or how they fly or videos. We want to study the people who actually have contact. Why? They're the guys with the answers. They're the guys that are interacting with these extraterrestrials. They're the ones that could tell us how they feel, how they talk,
They've had the first-hand experience. What we all sit around and speculate, they've experienced.
That's right.
Theoretically, I mean, as long as they're not nutcases making it all up.
Well,
I'd like to think that the ones that are truthful and have evidence to prove that something phenomenal is happening to them.
That's where we have to separate the wheat from the chaff, and it's hard to do, but fortunately a lot of people are coming forward. Now, where I was revolving with Grant Cameron is he did a lecture saying that a lot of abductees are before birth. The number one prerequisite to be an abductee is that your parents were an abductee. One or more parents were. They go down family lines. And so he believes that a lot of musicians, and it's all over these songs, and he talks about so many artists from the 60s, 70s, and beyond, from John Lennon to your father even. I believe there was a big UFO sighting at a Black Sabbath concert.
There was a huge one, and it actually even made it on an episode of I think UFO Hunters.
Really?
Yeah, they did a.
Tell us about that real quick.
So I want to say it was Chicago or Illinois, no, it's somewhere in the Midwest. During one of my dad's concerts, literally, I mean, there was 25,000, 30,000 people at this outdoor venue, all witnessed this craft fly over. It was right around dusk, and there was photographs. It was a big event. I mean, listen, if I was an alien, then I was like, hey, what are all these people doing watching this person jump around on a stage? This is interesting.
It's true.
It's like when you see all those lemurs like stand up in like the middle of a field and they're all just kind of standing there.
Interesting.
Plenty to pick from.
That's right. Now, when we did a brief interview about 20 minutes last year, I asked you what got you influenced in this, and you said that every time your father would come back from tour, he would bring you UFO books or movies. Do you think that maybe he had some incident in his past, or maybe your grandparents? Has anybody in your family had?
I think my dad's always been intrigued by the possibility, and we would always talk about it as a kid. And there was this one book that got given to my dad in a really kind of strange way. There's a book, like a boutique bookshop in LA, and when my dad was buying me a bunch of UFO books, apparently this guy behind the counter was like, "Yo, you into this? I have a book for you I want to give you." It's basically it was like an underground book, kind of. I never saw this thing again. It was called The Matrix, and it looked homemade, like someone had Xeroxed it, and it had, sketches of various types of beings, and it had all these, redacted documents, top secret documents. I would say 90% of the stuff in this photocopied, like, homemade book that my dad got, I've never seen it replicated in any book since, even online. And I don't know where this thing came from, but this book to me was so fascinating and so, like, I mean, it spun me out. It had stuff about Stonehenge and why Stonehenge was actually a portal and like kind of a bit of a Stargate type thing and all this crazy. And this was well before Ancient Aliens was ever on TV. I mean, we're talking 1996. My dad gave me this book, and so it was really like, that was and my dad he would always, I think he kind of made a bigger deal out of it. He's like, listen, like, I'll keep a hold of this book. When you want it, you just ask me and I'll get it for you. And he was, he kind of, I think he played up that, this is like a coveted document a little bit, but it really captivated my, imagination and my thoughts.
Do you have access to that book?
It's somewhere in England. I could get it. Next time I'm in England, I'll see if I can dig it out from somewhere. But it's to call it a book, I think is giving too much credit to what books are. I mean, it's literally like Xeroxed documents kind of bound together. That's it.
There's two experts, a father and son team. They're known as the worldwide experts on verifying documents. It's Dr. Bob Wood and his son Ryan Wood. they testified at the citizen hearing. I would love if you get your hands on that for them just to take a look at some of these documents. Let me ask you about the redacted released files from CIA and NSA. Don't you think it's just fascinating how it was nothing but a date and then 99% blacked out paper, with marker? Why the heck even release a paper like that? It's just mind boggling. It's a waste of time.
Right. I mean, I think because it's that thing, it's to stall the process. Yeah. It's like, oh, well, Freedom of Information Act, sure, we'll give you the document. Well, look, we gave you the document. We just had to black everything out. Well, then you have to file another Freedom of Information Act and then another one. It's to drag it out. The government, if there's one thing the government is really efficient at, it's not being efficient.
Yes. And you're absolutely right, especially this government, and the greedier it gets. We have such a high tax rate. You have, Obama, his campaign in 2008 was the world's most expensive ever at $1 billion. And he's in his lame duck period. And what is he doing constantly? Him and his family are just fake. Or Air Force One goes out. They send literally a small army, to secure the area. So you got people starving on the streets, and then you got, the first lady with the first children, spending time in Italy and Venice, and I don't know where their next stop is now, somewhere in France, if I'm not mistaken. But point being is things are a little screwed up.
Yeah, just to say the least. I mean, we're living in strange times. It doesn't matter, it doesn't matter what political party you believe in, what faith you follow. I mean, I think the one thing we can all agree on is that this is strange times.
About a little over a week ago, we had that chat, and then I thought it was just so fascinating. I decided to record it. I haven't released it yet. If you say we should, we should. But
yeah, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's just just a little off the cuff.
Brainstorm. Well, it's ironic because I didn't plan on it. I just planned on talking, a few minutes, and we just got into it because it's just so much information on this.
Yeah.
I talked about the movie Thrive. Did you get a chance to see it?
I did, absolutely. Yeah, I've actually watched it twice now.
Really? No. The guy Foster Gamble who produced it was on 2 months ago. He's actually going to be back in a couple weeks on the show, and then Nassim Harriman was on last month, and he's going to be back on. He's going to be back soon. And I wanted to get your take on the entire movie, just from beginning to end, from the way it connected the dots, and what did you think of Nassim Harriman's theories that really the implications are what was science fiction this morning is just thrown away this afternoon. The moment we can use these theories,
Well, absolutely. I mean, listen, it's I think they even use it in the film. There was a group of people who said the world was round while the rest of the world said the world was flat. Yep. And until they proved the world was round, they were considered lunatics and they should be locked up. I mean, there was the doctor that came, his name escapes me, but the doctor that conceived the notion that germs existed. He was literally locked into a mental asylum. And then some years after he died, then everyone was like, well, actually, yeah, these little microscopic things we can't see could be what's making people sick. So it's, we don't know what we don't know, and we only know what we know.
Exactly. And I think he did such a fascinating job by linking everything and then fact-checking it all. He spent more money fact-checking. And obviously, this is a pure philanthropist. Instead of making this for profit, what does he do? Multi-million-dollar film, boom, out there for free. Yeah,
because at the end of the day, he sees the bigger picture, and that's what I think is really commendable. He's looking at this from 10,000 feet. He's not looking at it from his bank account.
Yes.
And he sees that, the more people you can educate on the way the world really is and how we can make it better, I think that's incredibly powerful. I would love to see that movie get amazing.
And it's 20 plus languages so far, if I'm not mistaken.
I mean, that's phenomenal. And it's that said McDonald's was good for you. Now you look and it's like they're closing McDonald's down left and right because everyone saw through the BS. It's all smoke and mirrors. So, it's one of those things where slowly but surely you just got to keep chipping away. You keep chipping away at a wall. Eventually it's going to crumble down. And it's, I think that I hope in my lifetime we will see a paradigm shift. And we will see a shift of power from these big corporations and these large government entities that are controlling, how we receive, education and and experience, the world and the reality of, ultimately, it's the reality of our dimension which is being infringed upon.
Yes, yes, I wholeheartedly agree, and I honestly hope that we just can bring awareness, because I was just passively observing this stuff and researching just since I was a kid. That literally some of my earliest memories are with regards to, honestly, my parents are Greek immigrants. They came from little tiny villages, no electricity, no running water. So I never had an allowance. They wanted me to work. So since 5 years old, I was busting tables at the restaurant and the family restaurant. And 9 years old, I was placed behind the cash register. So they needed me to learn the value of a dollar from the moment I learned to speak English, which was when I was 5. And what happened is the first thing I buy is I happen to be looking through classified ads, and I see a guy who's selling UFO movies. So I'm making weekly trips to buy every UFO documentary this guy has, and it took me about a year before I got this collection. And that just goes to show my obsession going on there, and before I finally took on an active role. If we don't educate, we're never going to get a word across. And each person that speaks out really is inspiring others. Now, let me ask you this. Do you know of anybody else that, other than who we mentioned, who is closeted, that speaks out on this? Because I know I could tell you this publicly, because when I was working with Third Phase of the Moon, the people from Whoopi Goldberg reached out to us, asking for exclusive content and to see some footage. And we said, give us an interview. And she said, sorry, I can't. The View won't let me. And we were kind of blown away at that, but that just goes to show there's one more person really interested. Do you know of any that are interested?
I think there's a lot of people. I mean, I know, the guys from the band Tool are very, they're very interested in this stuff. I mean, they have actually in one of their songs they used a recording from Art Bell on Coast to Coast years ago, and they're intrigued. A lot of, musicians, I think, inherently, because I think as the type of artists that they are, musicians' minds wander and they're thinkers at the end of the day. I know a lot. I've had a lot of great conversations, with Marilyn Manson. He's kind of more into the, he was at one point he was very interested in more kind of occultist type stuff and spirituality and kind of the clash between good and evil. Like that was his. Had a lot of great kind of philosophical conversations with him years ago about that.
I think it's all connected. I honestly think it's all connected.
I absolutely do.
When you think about good and evil, it goes all the way from theology to humankind, to humanity, to, I would imagine it extends to literally every other life form out there until they are wise enough to evolve and realize, hey, you got to stop killing each other or whatever it be.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, I think if an alien race really wanted to reveal itself to us, they clearly have the power. I honestly think they're not doing it on a large scale because they go, well, you're all just still knuckle dragon kind of, baboon hybrids. Like we're all. I mean, we're not. I mean, what is it? Michio Kaku says we're not even a tier 1 culture.
That's right. That's right. He says we are a type 0, type 0 culture, and at the same time, the sad part is that not only are we a type 0 culture, that the internet is fortunately a type 1 civilization. That's the way he put it. And of course, when we can get to that type 1, we will get to traveling through our solar system. Type 2 is terraforming and intergalactic travel. But hopefully we'll get there as long as we could stop killing each other. If we were looking from the outside in, what would you see? I mean, we're a scary bunch of people.
We're scary, but I think that at the end of the day, we're more beautiful than we are scary.
I believe that. I just hope we can get the rest of the world to follow suit. There's that sad show, First 48, as you know, that follows the homicide detector on. I am just blown away at the lack of respect for life.
Yeah. Life is cheap to a lot of people, and I think once, man really values the kind of what the individual has, I think then, only then will things shift. I think as an entire race.
Yes, and I think that's when they might actually start to come, because what happens if they come now? I think all the gangsters will shoot them.
Yeah, totally. You'll have all these controlling bodies of varying groups of faith coming up with their opinion, and they're going to try and put their stamp on it to what they think it is, and then you're going to have, rioting in the street, and you literally would have breakdown of society. I mean, like those scenes in Independence Day when everyone's just running, screaming. Like, I don't think that's necessarily far from what it would be like.
Yes, exactly. I don't think so either. I think there would be more people coming forward and more people embracing it than actually shooting it. But I think at the same time, there is that section that will shoot it. Mm-hmm. Now, what we talked about, in case we don't end up releasing that little impromptu chat, as you told a really fascinating story about your friend, and I was hoping that the listeners can get a dose of that story.
For sure. So, it's a pretty fascinating story. I used to be heavily into rock climbing, and I traveled the world. I mean, I rock climbed all over Europe and Asia, and tons of road trips in America to Yosemite and Bishop, and all these legendary kind of crags. And one of my very, very best friends, who was kind of my climbing mentor, was a guy from Britain named Mike, and he lived in Australia for a number of years. And one of his mentors was this very kind of rugged Australian, like outback living kind of. I actually lived in the Blue Mountains in Australia. And he was a real, I never met the guy, but he was always described as a real kind of straight up, kind of pragmatic, like, analytical climber, like, very, but earthy, but not overly spiritual. Didn't believe in aliens, wasn't like a particularly like, wasn't a God-fearing man or anything. And he told my friend Mike this story, that one day he went up to his bedroom and he went to take a nap. And he sat in like an armchair in his bedroom that looked out of his window out into kind of just rolling kind of, just bare land, nothing out there. And as he was dozing off, he felt someone touching him on his arm, like with a hand running down the side of his arm, almost as if, how you might go up to like your wife, or, your wife might do to you when you're sleeping, just gently kind of graze their hand down your arm. And as he reached to touch the hand that was touching him, he felt these long, he described them as long, scaly fingers. And his instant reaction was he grabbed the fingers and snapped them. Like, rock climbers have incredibly strong hands. I mean, that's that's your tool when you're a climber.
Yes.
I have friends, I used to be able to do, 10 pull-ups on 2 fingers. Like,
wow.
Just, like, when I was 19 and about 40 pounds lighter. But, we have strong fingers and hands, and it's just, and
you rely on them.
Oh, absolutely. And he grabbed these long, scaly fingers, snapped them. As he opened his eyes, he saw this small creature run, jump out the window in front of him, and then shoot off into the air. But when he snapped the fingers, he said this creature let out the loudest, like, high-pitched squeal, and his wife downstairs, who was cooking dinner, heard it all. She heard, like, she heard screaming, she heard, like, feet stamping, like, running, and then she comes running up there. This gentleman was beads of sweat, completely terrified, had no idea what he saw, but, he believes that, something, he doesn't, he was like, I'm not saying it was alien, I don't know what it was, but something, a small creature with long fingers, that was upright on 2 legs, was touching him. He believes he broke its fingers, and it jumped out the window and shot up into the air.
That is extremely scary when you think about it.
Oh, yeah.
What kind of, honestly, what kind of being, first of all, has the ability to fly,
yeah.
right? And second of all, and this is also this brings me to my other point. So you said he's not a spiritual guy.
Nope.
Obviously, he knew this thing wasn't human. It didn't look human. What if there was a craft that landed and you have these beings look out? What are the skeptics going to do? Are they going to say, hey, finally aliens are here? Or are they going to say, nope, that's our military craft with our genetically engineered humanoids?
Yeah, droid, new kind of drone humans. I think people will always make of something what they will. 90% of people tend to believe what the talking box tells them. And, the remaining 10%, I tend to believe, there's that kind of that 10% window where everyone kind of will find what makes most sense to them.
Yes, exactly. And but the only good thing I have to say is that's true. But that I think that percentage is starting to shrink because the awareness and the percentage of people that are starting to believe is really so much higher out there than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. On that level, I think we're good. And what a lot of these contactees, abductees, I mean, this is just based on these literally hundreds, no, it's definitely in the thousands at this point, definitely well over 1,000 people who have had contact that I've directly spoken to myself over the last 5+ years that literally talk about the fact that they're given messages that when more than half of the earth believes that unequivocally that we are being visited, not that life exists somewhere else, but that we have been visited, are being visited, then they'll start to show more openly. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that's the paradigm shift that's starting to happen with these enormous cases that are happening. And, as you heard before, just this past Tuesday, one of the news UFO reports that we gave was another UFO spotted over Stonehenge. Just like you mentioned. Clearly, there's something that attracts them to these places.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I think, well, for one, I think Stonehenge represents the beginning of civilization on the planet. From when it's so old, it goes back to like the early, when man first came together and went, you know what, we're no longer going to be these tribes, we're going to create society and we're going to create community and we're going to build and work together. Like that's a paradigm shift right there. When everyone was kind of hiding in their caves and, and there was no real, anything other than just, we were not much different from, any other animal. But once we came together and decided to grow crops and create community and build structures and, and learn and want to create technology, that's the kind of paradigm shift that's going to happen again to take us to that next level. But what will that be? Maybe it is, the kind of global understanding that we are not alone.
The awareness, the global awareness. Now, speaking of ancient sites, Stonehenge, and I'm sure you've seen so many other places. I'm sure you've traveled the world and seen a lot of these ancient sites, I'm assuming, right?
I have, yeah. I've been to quite a few, very old ancient sites.
What's your take on the fact that you have similarities on places where cultures at that time should have not had any ability to communicate with each other, and according to our official history, had no official communication? What's your speculation on the fact that you got pyramids in Japan, Egypt, South America, all over the world?
Maps of Antarctica under the ice,
yes.
That. I mean, to me, that's such a blatant. I'm sure someone could always say, oh, that's just, that pyramid, the reason why we built pyramids is maybe because that's just what people are meant to do. I don't know. But having a map that's however many hundreds of years old that shows what Antarctica looks like under the ice is, But anyway, back to your question. I don't think that this isn't the first time mankind has got to this point. I think mankind is far older than people believe. I think societies have existed a lot longer. And, perhaps at one point these ancient civilizations had technology that, was maybe given to them, or maybe they developed, and there was a way for communication and cross-pollination, ultimately. I mean, think of it like this. Did you ever used to watch the show Life After Man?
Yes.
So you watch that show, and all these scientists, you theorize what a city will look like after a week of no people, a month, a year, 10 years, 100 years. It only takes 400 or 500 years for there literally to be zero evidence that humans were ever here.
Yes. And Jason Martell, he is one of the stars on Ancient
I know
Aliens.
Jason. Jason's actually how I ended up at the Patient 17 surgery.
Ah, okay, that I didn't know. But so then that one of his theories is that we did have a super advanced human race here on top of them visiting us, that he thinks going back to 25,000, 26,000 years, that had this technology and wisdom that somehow either died off, moved off, or maybe moved underground. He doesn't know where they went, but he believes that a lot of these sites and structures were created, like you said, by a human race, an advanced human race that is somewhere else or maybe died off or whatever it be.
Yeah. No, I believe it's totally plausible. I mean, I remember reading something about they think that there's gold mines that are 100,000 years old in Africa.
Well, actually, Michael Cremo, he goes by Forbidden Archaeologist, world famous guy. He lives right here in Southern California, and he was on the show not too long ago, and we were talking that I asked him what is the most amazing site that he found. He found a gold mine here in California that is 5 million years old with human bones in there. They're bigger, they're 8 to 9 foot tall, but they're definitely human, Homo sapien. What the heck can explain that?
How, is that? I want to. Okay, I need to see. I need to go there. Let's do an expedition. We're going.
By all means, I will absolutely set you up with him whenever you're ready. Johnny from London's got a question. Go ahead, Johnny.
Yeah, hi Jack. I want to take you back to you were saying about being at the surgery with Dr. Reed and the implant taken out. Dr. Lear, excuse me. And my question was what were your thoughts on the possibility of people being taken and having implants? And do you think it's a god, angel, demon thing, or do you think it's an alien thing?
I think some people's experience could very well be the kind of god, angel, demon, like you're saying. I do think